episode 5 of Rethink with Refash, a platform where we challenge the norms, spark meaningful conversations, and inspire a new way of thinking about sustainability and conscious consumption. I'm your host, Akanksha Kela Akashi, the founder of Refash, and today I'm thrilled to introduce our guests, Drishti and Rashmick, founders of Lafaani. Lafaani was born during the pandemic, not in a design studio, but in the minds of two individuals who never really set out to create a fashion label. Their approach is rooted in thoughtful constraints, ensuring that every piece they create is not just aesthetically beautiful, but deeply intentional. With backgrounds in environmental studies, Drishti and Rashmick bring a fresh perspective that challenges the traditional industry narrative. In this episode, we'll explore their journey from environmental researchers to fashion entrepreneurs, the dynamics of their partnerships, and how they balance sustainability with the realities of running a partnership business. Get ready for a conversation that will shift the way you think about fashion and the power of creating consciously. Welcome, Drishti and Rashmick.
Thank you so much for having us.
So tell me about Lafaani. How was Lafaani born, especially during the pandemic?
I think the thought of Lafaani really was born many years before the pandemic, in a sense. So Rashmik and I, we met while we were doing our masters in environmental studies and resource management, and we feel back in the day. There were very few conversations about sustainability in fashion. And we had, by the second year of our masters, we had studied and we had, worked in sectors like agriculture, like waste, like water policy, things like that. And we felt the understanding both about sustainability in fashion as well as the sense of what sustainability in a holistic sense could mean was very, very limited. I think it was a very narrow sort of thought process. And we would talk about how so much of what we had, seen growing up was also inherently sustainable. Yeah. And I think it was that one thought that sparked a lot of interesting conversations between us. I almost tell this to everyone. Rashmik was probably one of the only guys I would see around not wearing a t-shirt, but wearing, block printed, embroidered shirts in college. So that was something that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it was craft essentially that we started talking about.
Right.
And I think the conversation in a sense hasn't ended.
Yeah, and so in college it was more about having that drive to understand the subject more, understanding crafts, understanding textiles, going back home, speaking to our mothers, getting to know their understanding of craft and textiles.
Yeah.
But then as we moved forward after graduation, we all obviously we went our separate ways, where we continued working in various socio-economical impact projects. And but between the two of us, the conversation always continued. And by the time I think the pandemic hit, Drishti had done enough research to understand the supply chain. She was at ground with the farmers and the farming communities, understanding cotton cultivation. So I think a lot of groundwork had already been done by the time the pandemic started. And once it did, uh, we sort of had that, push within ourselves, now is the time to start something new because you have that time at hand.
Yeah.
That's how we did start Lafaani. Obviously, there was a lot of brainstorming in those initial days as to what the brand should talk about, or what the brand should create, and what are the ethos, what is the ideology, and we just kept building on from that.
Because of the fact that both of you did not come from a conventional design or a fashion background, your approach towards sustainability has been slightly different. If yes, then how? And do you think that's what sets Lafaani apart?
I think it is slightly different. There are a lot of pros and cons to it as well. I think a lot of things that would have been easier are not, because we are always thinking in that lens of sustainability,
Yeah.
how is it affecting,
You're
what is the
constantly
positive
challenging.
impact, what is
Yeah.
the negative impact,
Yeah.
and then if there are negative impact, what is the alternative?
Right.
And then we have to come down to the business of it as well, right? We have to look at costs and everything. So that is always a struggle, but it's also something that excites us, because it not only lets us think out of the box in terms of design, but it also nudges the designers who we work with to think out of the box in terms of sustainability and design. I remember when we decided we won't do plastics and metals because of the state of recycling in India right now.
Yeah.
Our designers went into a shock.
Because I mean, you can't think closure if you
Yeah.
don't think zippers.
Yeah.
Right.
And then a lot of limitations in terms of silhouettes also come in, right?
Right.
When we decided that we won't use fusings in our garments, our master tailor was like, how will you ever get the fit?
How will you get structure? And
Structure.
you're talking about
Yeah.
creating outerwear,
Jackets.
and you want to create jackets, and how do
Yeah.
you get all of the shape and everything?
Yeah.
So I think it also stemmed from the fact that we were thinking not from a place of plenty, but from a place that meant that we had to be judicious about everything that we were doing. So I think it's different in that sense, because I'm also a big believer in the fact that creativity doesn't really mean really thinking out of the box and sort of reinventing the wheel every single time, because I think there is a wheel. It's about how to sort of work also beautifully within that box or the lines that you've sort of set for yourselves.
Right from the start, we also acknowledge the fact that we are not from a design background.
Yeah.
But the people we are working with are experts in their field.
Yeah.
My master tailor has been working for a good 20 years now.
25 years or so.
So if there are, suggestions, design suggestions coming from their end, I'm not going to put my foot down and say, no, this is what I want, or this is what we look at, this is how we look at it. When we ask the experts, then they are the experts in this case.
And they also feel respected and
course, because-
valued as part of the family.
Absolutely, and I think it's also sort of our ode to the aspect of cultural sustainability in this whole dialogue of sustainability, right? Because it's so important to also take into account everything that they have learned, practiced, seen all of these years, right? Rather than us coming in telling them what is to be done.
So tell me about the 4 design principles that are almost like the thread for Lafaani.
So the first is, of course, design for longevity, which means, and which also ties back to the name, right? We're talking of something immortal. And then the way that design for longevity works for us is in a sense of creating a garment that lives for a really long time. And for that, it means the quality needs to be really good. You need to make sure that you're also inviting the customer in the whole process of taking care of it better, which means the wash care instructions need to be on the garment. The consumer needs to know how to really take care of it. And, because at the end of the day, it is a handcrafted product, right? And if there's going to be a certain push and pull with the way you're using it, it's also going to maybe tear, or there's going to be like a little repair that it's going to need. And so we also want to equip the customer with having that, the means to sort of repair it.
Right.
It also means that we want to create something which not only pairs well with what we do in terms of other collections in the past or future collections, but also pieces that maybe somebody already owns. So I don't want them to per se pick up everything from an ensemble that I have created, but really just pair it judiciously in terms of what really goes well with their personal style. So I think that is what design for longevity means. It also means that we make the garment in monomaterials, which is probably not something that's spoken about enough. But, as Rashmik mentioned, the recycling infrastructure in the country is not so robust, which means if somebody has decided to get rid of that garment, where is it ending up, right? Is it going to a recycling facility? Maybe not, right? Which means then you make it, instead of using a blended material, you use a single material, which in our case, of course, is cotton.
Yeah.
So the second, of course, is multifunctionality, and that's super important from both an inclusivity point of view, but also from the point of view of actually inviting the customer and the consumer in the whole process of wearing the garment, because garments are lived experiences. They are to be worn, not just hung in your closet, which means we acknowledge the fact that people change sizes, right? Over time, sometimes as little as even during the day, right? You may feel bloated, you may feel okay on certain days. So then it is to give certain amount of adjustability in the clothing, whether it's through smart ruching details or just some adjustability, or also giving them like various styling options. So that would mean just making the garment reversible, having a more dressier side to it, and then a slightly more toned down side to it.
The next was craft connections, which was an obvious for us. We wanted to establish partnerships with people who were working directly with artisans and, in clusters, and sort of understood our ethos, understood the fact that we are not going to be one of those brands that are going to do bulk orders, but also understood the fact that we are going to be partners for a long time. That was really important to us. We wanted to reach different regions of the country. And we also, realized the fact that when you go at ground in different regions of the country, you have to speak the local language, and that is not something we can do.
Right.
So what we do is then partner with organizations that are working there. So I think the dialogue process is easier that way.
Right.
But in terms of craft connections, yes, of course, textiles is a big part of what we explore. A lot of the cotton that we do is indigenous cotton, whether it's Kala cotton from Gujarat, Kundu from Karnataka. Now, these are ancient world cottons that, lost their charm once, mill spun cotton came in.
Right.
But now they are at a revival stage because environmentally they make sense. They are, drought and pest resistant. They are naturally rain fed, and we wanted to be part of these revival movements. So when we do create collections, that is also something we focus on. These are also, it's like a lost art that's coming back, right? And these are essential, traditional knowledges, which is only present in those communities. Embroidery, again, very important to what we do. I think Kantha was like a natural choice for us when it came to, taking it up as a, brand design language. It's a story of resourcefulness, right? It started as, piecing together fabric scraps to create something new. And that as an ideology stuck to us. And, just that simple running stitches can really elevate also a garment, which made the most sense to us in that way. And that is what we've been trying to do. And again, the women we've been working with, the embroiderers, they've been with us from the start. And every year we try and, add more to the team, because it's not just an incredible experience to work with all of them together, but also understand everything that they've learned from. They've started learning doing this since childhood, and they've come to like Delhi maybe for looking for other job opportunities. But this knowledge is something that had been passed down to them, and they've always had it.
When your why is very clear, I think everything just ties in together really beautifully. And I think that that's something that I really see in the both of you. You know exactly why you're doing, you've sort of created Lafaani and what's the impact that you want this to have. And everything is just sort of tying in so beautifully with that. How many collections have you guys? I know that you somewhere said that you're trend agnostic. are you also vary of how many collections you're producing on an every year basis? Do you take part in fashion weeks? How have you navigated that?
Yeah.
So I think with respect to collections, it's more about what seems natural rather than sort of trying to stick with a spring, summer, and autumn, winter calendar.
Right.
We don't do seasonal collections at all anyway.
Right.
So they are what we call as seasonless collections,
Yeah.
which means that within a collection, the textiles are going to vary from light to heavier weights.
Right.
That you can, wear a single layers in the warmer months and maybe layer up and use them in winter months. When we did the collection on brown cotton, I mean, it's a really capsule collection because I think it has all of 12 pieces. But the idea was to introduce this one textile in our textile library and also understand that there is a certain constraint that comes with these textiles. So with a brown cotton, it has an annual cycle, which means that the harvest is only going to happen once a year, and there's only that much limited textile that can come out of it. So it isn't a very large collection that I can do, but as Rashmik said, we want to be part of these revival movements right from the start. So there is always that intention when we're doing a collection. What we are really passionate about doing this year, and I hope it happens, is actually working with indigenous wool, because I think that too is, Desi Oon is again a completely made in India story.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we want to do. So it's not from the point of view of let's do 3 collections and let's see, the economic viability and the how are we going to like really sell those 3 collections. But if you're doing one, then how is it that that one is really adding value to both us as a brand and to the consumers who buy into the brand?
So what is the distribution of the collection like? How do you partner with retail formats online and offline?
So when it's online, obviously the entire collection goes out. We are a made-to-order brand. Uh, so only once, say, an order is placed, we then hit production for that particular order. And that is how we initially wanted it to be, because we were very conscious about the fact that we don't want to stock up on
Create any kind of
inventory.
stock.
If unsold, then what do we do about it, right? And we did not want to have that sort of a waste creation on our end. But we also did realize that the amount of work that goes behind our garments, there are textures to the textile, there is a lot of embroidery that is there. It needs to be felt and touched and seen, right? Which means that physically a customer should be able to see the product before buying it, which is when we realize that maybe focus on certain key store placements, and these would be stores who you know have the same ethos, or are stocking
already,
similar brands with sustainability in mind. uh, but then the general practice was you send us all designs in all sizes on a consignment basis, and if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, you take it back.
So
And
we're constantly pushing our boundaries there, where we started negotiating with stores to say, you know what, let's do like a careful curation. You take a look at the whole collection, see what works for you as a store. Let's sit together on it because we think these are the pieces that will do well, come back from your end. And then we're going to only make those maybe in 2 sizes to really also minimize risk on both sides.
Yeah. Are there any key challenges that you guys had to kind of overcome, in the sort of initial years of whether you're working with the craft clusters or, sort of forming your own team or retailing? Where did you see the most amount of challenges and how did you overcome that?
Everywhere.
Yeah, there are.
I think challenges were there everywhere because I think it stems from the fact that there was no ecosystem around us. We had to build that ecosystem. So there was, of course, trying to find the right talent to hire. I think that was our designer was our first hire. because we knew that this is somebody who's coming from the industry, trained and groomed in the industry, so would be able to handhold us, right, rather than the other way around. We could tell what we wanted to the designer, but at the end of the day, he or she had to do it for us. For the crafts or for the clusters also, I think there are various routes that we tried to work around, and then we finally understood that working with grassroots organizations make more sense. But also identifying those organizations took a lot of time, because we wanted them to be aligned not only with us on the fact that if they were paying the artisans the correct wage, but also were they seeing the artisans as co-creators rather than also that sort of being a diktat that was
Do you think that
given to them.
exists?
I think there is. I think it does. The industry only talks in terms of volume and quantity and per piece rate
Speed.
and speed and those kind of things, which is insane. I remember our master ji asking us ki, if you have to only make 12 designs, can I just make them in like 6 days
And then
for
go.
you and then just take off and do other work? And I said, absolutely not. We're going to hire you, and that's how it's going to happen.
How do you define sustainability for yourself in a world where sustainability is also so layered?
I think sustainability is nuanced. It is definitely that's built from the ground up, and there is no one model that fits all. I think it is very specific to the what, to the where, in the sense of the geography that you're operating in, the kind of people, the culture, the systems in place already. I think if one wants to truly be sustainable, it's to first understand all of these aspects and then devise a strategy around it.
I think as long as we know that what we are doing not only respects the environment but also the people and the culture, I think you are in the right direction. Like, we always discuss, there's no one right solution. But the end goal, to reach the end goal of sustainability, you have to find different right solutions and drive towards that goal.
Yeah, I think when the intention
Yeah.
is there, then the road kind of
Yeah.
unfolds as well. You've also integrated a climate action API into your products. Can you talk to us about that?
So I think the idea was again to very deliberately work on products and know what their carbon footprint really is going to be. And that also, in fact, helps us aid the design process, because let's say I know a shirt maybe may have a carbon footprint of 2 kgs. But this is, let's say, a naturally dyed textile, which of course comes with a lot of design constraints on its own. So for the previous collection, we worked with azo-free dyes, but what that meant is that I'm going to use a completely hand-spun, hand-woven, textile, because overall I want the carbon footprint to still be low, as opposed to adding more mechanized processes or things to it which may impact its carbon footprint.
And
So
what is the customers have responded in what way, really?
uh,
Yeah, I think we do like an annual survey usually at the end of the year, and when we did ask about integration of this API, what were their thoughts? Most of the responses were that they were glad that somebody was doing
Yeah.
it, and the fact that it actually encouraged them to now ask the same question to other brands, because as consumers you don't really need to get into the hassle of knowing a brand before making a purchase. There's a lot of greenwashing that happens anyway, and it's okay if somebody says maybe this is a green product. if I as a customer like the product, I will not go further.
Right.
I might just not do that research on my own.
Yeah.
But if there are brands that are declaring data, that are showing the makers behind the product, who made your garment, how many hours went behind it, what is the carbon footprint. If brands start doing that by themselves, then A, customers don't have to go and do that research on their own. And B, if there's somebody who's not doing it but still claiming to be a green brand, then maybe ask them those questions.
Yeah. So from a customer's perspective, how do they identify a brand that is perhaps greenwashing
Impossible to.
Yeah.
or not greenwashing?
As dismal as that may sound, but at this point, I feel there's also so much information out there and all kinds of information that as an average consumer, if you do not really have interest or time to spend hours and hours researching, it's very difficult to really navigate this space and understand whose claims are right and whose claims are not right.
Do you think the influencers in this aspect what kind of a role do you think they play? Sustainability influencers or people who are probably not even influencers, but just are, advocating about, say, climate action or sustainability. Do you think that would be a good place to start for a customer?
I think when it comes to sustainability in fashion, we don't need sustainability influencers to influence. We need fashion influencers to influence sustainability, and that is not happening. When it comes to fashion, obviously it has to be design led. Initially when sustainable brands did start popping up, it was all about loungewear, simple kurtas, simple trousers. But that is not something that the rest of the fashion world is wearing, right? And that is
Or viewing as fashion.
or viewing as fashion.
That's true.
So when you are creating when you are creating designs which is design forward but also has that core element of sustainability, so yeah, that has to be promoted as a well designed product and not just a sustainable product.
Yeah.
Which means if there are influencers, they should also start thinking about what kind of garments they're wearing, right? You can't just promote a product because it looks good on you.
And I think also with influencers, you cannot be promoting sustainable brands on the one side and then fast fashion brands on the other.
Yeah.
So
you can't do a Zara haul.
Over consuming from sustainable brands.
correct. So I mean, in this age of social media and overconsumption, I'm not sure. Like I as a consumer and as a brand owner both feel that it's a very tricky space to navigate.
Yeah.
So, Rashmik, I read somewhere that you said that your first exposure to craft was a baby blanket that your grandmom made for you in Kantha. What was so special about that, and how has now your relationship with textiles evolved over time?
Yeah, so this realization happened much later actually, but only happened when I saw that baby blanket now being used by my nephews and nieces, and I realized, it was made almost 31 years ago now.
Yeah, you just declared your age. But sure.
Yeah, I turn 31 next March, so wish me then. But it's still now the softest quilt, and it's made from her sari in those times.
Wow.
And it's all stitched together, and it's really also something very nice to look at, if not something that also feels nice. And that's how we took up Kantha as a philosophy, right? Because that's when we learned about the story of it. And the embroidery itself is called Kantha, the quilt itself is called Kantha. It's all in one go, and it also has a lot of cultural significance in like Bengali literature and Bengali culture. But because in the olden days, village women would, stitch their husband's name in handkerchiefs or like pieces of clothes, as like a memento in that sense. And that's how the running stitch, culture started, and everyone was taught then.
Or the fact that it would actually go as a bride's dowry as part of
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And even my mom, you would see her. would see her stitching like our names, our nicknames in every piece of garment or any pillowcases and things like that. That was always happen. It's like they're always practicing their running stitches.
How sweet.
And these are things that we saw then, but we realized their importance much later as we grew up. But then, yeah, as a philosophy, that is what something we definitely then wanted to align with, because we wanted to be mindful of any waste that was being created. That's why upcycling is also, one of our core design principles. Every pre-consumer fabric waste that might be or is generated at the workshop is again all stitched together, patched together to create new things.
How do you think that we can refocus or maybe just encourage the young generation to actually adopt more of crafts and wear crafts? Like I don't know too many men who actually wear a lot of crafts, like you were just mentioning about Rashmick, back in college. How in a world where everyone's obsessed with tech, how do we get people to focus or to just be to flaunt the crafts that India has and to wear this more?
The spirit of the time that we live in, right? On the one hand, streetwear is gaining a lot of popularity, but I'm also a big believer in the fact that everything craft and everything handmade is also slowly and steadily, gaining that popularity, so to say. And it's just about talking about these crafts enough. It's about, I feel, making it also that aspirational. Why is it that, certain pop culture references or movies or influencers, why is it that you see, younger people wanting to wear things like that? Is because that's also what they've seen in popular culture, right? Maybe there is also an effort that needs to be done to put clothes that reflect all of that abundance of culture that we're really sitting on, and maybe start seeing that in mainstream media, because everybody young wants to wear Indian crafts, but on occasion, right? There has to be that understanding of, but crafts can also be every day, right? You can also wear simpler cotton handloom, as shirts, as blouses, as jackets, as opposed to wanting to pick up, which is a more polyester ish finished, piece.
Do you think that's also like a push in in a different direction in terms of thought process? Because we're all marketed that wear this and this is how you look like you're on trend in terms of say a dress or a garment, whereas craft can be quite individualistic, right? They are pieces that are not really made in millions. You might not have something that that will look exactly what you saw in a photograph, but it will speak to you and it will represent who you are as a person. But as a generation, we're not really talking about that, right? We're talking about like creating duplicates of each other and to say that okay, this is,
which is, I think, also brings me to the point of maybe having very little understanding of what your personal style really may be, right? Because I think today, as you said, everybody looks the same,
yeah,
right? You walk into a mall and everyone looks identical, and that's probably because they're also looking at those same set of people as references or as inspiration. But I feel also craft can be made more mainstream, and I think there is of course a larger movement required for this, in terms of both a push from brands and retail and consumers and media to also make it that aspirational. Because sure, you said that craft products or handmade products are not manufactured in millions, but they don't have to be consumed in millions either, I feel.
talking about the the Lakmé Fashion Week circular design challenge that you guys were runners up for, what was that journey like, and what do you think really stood out about your collection against everyone else that showcased?
I think the journey was honestly nothing short of surreal, because we'd had our own trials and tribulations with respect to this one competition, because for us, I think it is the only really coveted competition in the country, that recognizes the work that you're doing, and puts you in a community of, designers and people also who are working in the space, right? So I think for us it was just one of those things that you have on a vision board that you really want to be a part of. And the fact that we did not make it the last year, and we participated again this year, and we did not make it as the India finalists, but then came back as wildcard. That in itself is a journey.
Oh, wow. I
Right?
didn't know that.
Yes, yes. So 2023, we had participated and we did not make it to the India shortlist. This year again, we participated, and did not make it to the India shortlist. And then I think it was about 4 or 6 weeks later that we were called on as wildcard finalists.
Oh, wow.
So we'd gone through this whole spectrum of
Highs and
emotions,
lows.
of being extremely disappointed to just being extremely elated about being in the competition. Winning is not something that we'd even thought about, honestly. And I don't think that was the point. The point was also, to be seen as someone who's working in the craft space, as almost as outsiders of fashion. I know, I think I should stop saying that.
Yeah.
But I think I really, I'm very proud of the fact that, we don't come from this space, and yet we're here.
It was just surreal to see that entire collection, and I think that it also was like a lesson in layering, because the way that the pieces were sort of put together, each outfit, the embroideries were beautiful, the colors were beautiful, but the way everything was put together was just I think I wanted like lots of pieces of that collection. But it was
Yeah,
really
and I
beautiful.
think that's also exactly what you said is a good reminder that there's a whole system that works, and there are so many people who work just to make those couple of minutes on the runway really worth everyone's time, because we never thought that our garments could really be layered and styled this way. There are lots and lots of changes that happen from what was, the initial drawing to what was finally on the runway.
Yeah.
And such brilliant creative minds who actually brought all of it together. So yeah, I think just the whole experience, in the sense of working with so many people who know exactly how to do their job right, was brilliant.
Do you think that the pandemic pushed people to kind of take a pause on how they were really consuming? But do you think that that kind of stayed with people, or do you think everyone's kind of back to their regular buying
I
habits?
think we as humans have very short memory spans. I think people are pretty much back to shopping the way they used to. And I also feel that maybe for a brief moment after, all of these limitations were lifted, I think people really went a little bit bonkers. And there was almost this frenzy of consuming, because they'd been shut and locked and, for so long. So I genuinely feel that it was a temporary pause and nothing else.
Because also, I think what the lockdown really taught us is, now that we are out, you want to go out more, right? You want to travel a lot more before you get to a stage where again you are into a lockdown. And I think because these have also, these practices have also increased, uh, you end up buying a lot more in that sense, whether it's shopping for travel or whether it's shopping for destination.
Yeah. Do you think that the online landscape, obviously, pre-COVID and post-COVID, was very, very different? Do you think that that is something that has also shaped sustainability and consumption in a certain sense?
I think people now are more comfortable buying online. Earlier, there was always a tug of war between, what you buy, what you get. Uh, and especially when it came to us, there is a no return policy. Once you place an order, it'll be made as per your order, and then there's no return on that.
There's
But
exchange, but
there, yeah,
no return.
yeah, but the fact that people are still trusting that process and going
Yeah.
ahead with an order, I think this wouldn't have been possible pre-pandemic when people weren't used to placing orders. You know, there are Instagram shops that have popped up everywhere, right? And you just DM your order and it comes to you.
Yeah.
I think the ease of transaction has increased a lot more.
Yeah.
And especially if it's on, no-brainer products, right?
Yeah.
If it's a t-shirt, then why not? Why go spend your time and energy going to a store to pick up a t-shirt? Just order it online.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's just how lifestyles are changing now. And so having an online option makes it that accessible to the consumers.
So you guys have known each other for several years now. What do you think makes your partnership work? And also, what are your strengths and weaknesses? How do you navigate conflict? I know there are lots of questions, but maybe one at a time.
Maybe one answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, answer.
I think what works is that most of the time we are on the same wavelength. If we are judging somebody, it's for that same reason. But no, yeah, for us, I think our way of thinking is very much alike. So it makes conversations easier anyway.
I think it's also to understand that we were friends first, right? So there are a number of years that we've spent knowing each other as people before we actually, went into this. I have a host of other friends, right? Who I could have wanted to share this journey with, but the reason I wanted to, get on this journey with Rashmik was one, because I think we are a little different in terms of temperament. I think I'm a little bit more aggressive, assertive, and he just has a slightly more calming sort of aura and personality about him, which is good, because I think that's a little bit it almost provides the earthing that's required for somebody like me who's a little bit more volatile in just the way that I think and I operate. I like things to be quick, and I like all of that. So I think that helps.
It's a saggy Pisces
Yeah,
relationship thing.
we can just give like an astrology explanation to this. That
But I
just in
believe in
terms
that
of
as well.
in terms of sun signs, it just works.
Yeah.
But I think, just the fact that we've not sort of blindly gone on this journey, and we're not on this journey without have being just completely transparent with one another about just about everything. I think that has helped. And I think we're very aligned on core values, whether it is honesty, whether it is just being sincere about what we think, how we think, and how we want to grow the business. I mean, it's not like either of us don't have second thoughts, or we don't have moments where we moments of doubt. But I think the other's always sort of able to pull the other one back
Do you think
into
that
it.
that helps when
Of
you're,
course it does.
as
Yeah.
against having just, I mean, if you were to do this by yourself, perhaps.
Yeah.
do you
No, I think that is a decision that I had uh, taken a long time back, because Lafaani in my head was in the making 4 years before we actually launched the brand in 2021. And that is a decision that I had taken very early on, that it's not a journey that I want to be on just by myself. So I had asked Rashmik, and very early on, as to whether he'd want to do it, and then there was, I mean, of course, he jumped at the opportunity, because I mean we'd always been discussing it. Uh, but also I feel the whole journey has been very, very gradual, right? Because initially it was just thoughts and talks and all of those things, and it's only a couple of months down the line that it actually got to the point of execution.
Right.
So just that this whole journey has taken its own course of time. Yeah.
Tell me about how the name Lafaani came about.
So Lafaani actually came about, my brother and I, and he's going to kill me if I don't give him credit for it. But we are both big movie buffs, and we both love Vishal Bhardwaj's movies. So we were sitting and watching Heather, and there is a dialogue where he says, I think it's Rudar who says to the doctor in the movie that "Aap jism ho, main ruh hu," or "Aap fani, main lafani." So just that idea of something immortal. Of course, as a name, it was good because it's easy to pronounce. Everybody can get it right. As opposed to the slightly more complex sounding names that we were thinking about. But that is how Lafaani happened, and we just realized that it ties so beautifully into the whole story of circularity and creating something which, in a sense of its spirit, is immortal.
So tell me, what is the last sort of piece of advice that you'd like to give to young designers or students who want to start their own sustainable fashion brand?
I think at the cost of sounding repetitive, but I'm going to say that always look back on your journey and use that as an inspiration as opposed to looking outward. Because I always feel that way one always stays true to what they're doing.
Yeah. And also, I think understand like the power of collaborations. Don't try to do things just by yourself and just in your way. Try and understand that there are other people who are involved and try to make it a collaborative workspace in a sense for you to really build your brand from scratch.
So the last segment is a little bit of a fun segment. This is a game called Who's More Likely To. So I'm going to ask you the question and you can point either at each other or yourself, whoever's more likely.
And with no explanations.
Yeah, nothing. Who's more likely to binge a fashion documentary and call it work?
No, but sure, okay.
I'll binge, but it's work for you.
Who's more likely to send emails at 2 a.m.?
I think me.
Yeah, both, I think.
Yeah.
Who's more likely to charge during a last-minute crisis?
I'll give it to her.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
Who's most likely to start a deep conversation about sustainability at a party?
Drunk at a party. Yeah.
Who's most likely to bring up the Heather reference when explaining Lafaani's name?
I have to, otherwise my brother's literally going to kill me.
Who's most likely to get emotional over a beautifully handcrafted textile?
That's both of us.
Yeah,
Every single time we visit Dastakar and we come
we'll
across
hold hands like this together and
yeah.
just
In awe of
Yeah.
everything that you're seeing.
I think we're like kids at a candy store. It's just sheer awe and amazement and joy. Yeah.
Wow. Who's most likely to say, let's sleep on it before making a big business decision?
I think that should be both of us, but he'd like to
Yeah.
take the credit more so. Him.
because that's what I usually do.
Okay, that's
That's
it.
done?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode. We hope this conversation inspired you to rethink your role in shaping the future of fashion. Remember, change starts with us, and it's time to make choices that matter. Until next time, keep rethinking and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next discussion.